Hello and welcome to episode 178 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam,
Sahil.
and it is a quiet time of the year, I will say. We are in full hockey mode, although the Four Nations tournament is on, so there's no hockey really either. Yeah, we have a good episode for you today. Coming up in a little bit, we are interviewing Ruthvik to talk about his draft. But in the meantime, I guess we just got a little bit of banter. I guess first and foremost, we are coming up on the roster waiver uncrunch. I guess the roster uncrunch.
The
What do
Roster
we?
Uncrunch.
Um, it's a bit of the free for all when we're able to start putting guys on the IL. Um, and start to add guys. The 18th, I believe, is when players will become IL eligible, and the 20th will be when waivers clear. So I think a lot of intrigue there, and Andrew has already gotten a bit of a head start on that.
Yeah, he finally cut Kyle Wright and he picked up Jason Adams. So great setup option for the Padres. I know they've discussed perhaps trading Robert Suarez, so maybe he ends up closing. Although I think the way kudos to the Padres, they've been super creative on how they've structured these contracts to be able to fit everybody in. It's gonna be pretty ugly for them next year.
Hmm.
But that's a problem for next year when somebody's salaries increase. They got like Nick Pivetta and Michael King this year for like a combined like 6 or 7 million or something stupidly low like that. I think that might even be high, saying 6 or 7 mil. So uh, yeah, they I don't know if they necessarily need to make any more trades. Yeah. It is interesting that Andrew held on to Kyle Wright all this time through the injuries and the trade from Atlanta to Kansas City, and now that he's finally competing for a spot in their rotation, he finally cuts him, which I think is a
Yeah,
right move. I think it's long overdue, but yeah, that's damn.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And yeah, on Jason Adam, I think a lot of people were going to be in on him. I know I would have been. I know Ruthvik would have been. So he would have been on several teams' waiver boards, and Andrew, if he was gonna cut Kyle Wright anyway, nice to get in front of that. Um, but yeah, a lot of people here at the roster uncrunch. I feel like what happens is in every November we all cut all of our relievers, and then every February we all add them up, add them back again. That's kind of
Yeah,
what happens.
no, you're not wrong. And I'd say really to holds guys because I think like anytime a new closer kind of pops up, they get added pretty quickly. Like I know Jake added Trevor McGill right after the Devin Williams trade. I know I added Ryan Presley right after the his trade to the Cubs was the last week I think. So um, it's interesting how we do this, but I like this new system where we get to put guys on the IL at a certain date. We have the waivers beforehand. It kind of feels like the unofficial start to the season in a way where we have some trades in November and December. We kind of get a little back to it with the draft, but then there's another lull, and then we get some roster flexibility and we pick up relievers and everybody's kind of getting back into it and they're like, wait, like maybe I need to make X move or Y move or Z move, or I forgot how shitty X position was on my team, or oh my God, all these guys are getting hurt. And you see a couple more trades. And I think last year we saw some pretty impactful February and March trades. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more impactful ones this year. But I'm just glad baseball's back, spring training's here. Um, it's a little bittersweet because you inevitably hear about all the players that got hurt over the off season, but like nothing's really come of it. I'm still scarred from Kyle Bradish, them announcing he had an elbow injury last year on the first day of spring training. I thought we were gonna have a nice Burns, Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez top three to rotation all year last year. That didn't quite pan out, but. Um, yeah, I'm excited. I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah, no, definitely excited. Yeah, really does start to feel like spring, get us back into it. I'm not going to give away any of my board or anything like that, but I have a lot of people I'm looking at for some of these roster spots. Um, and yeah, that's about it on that. Um, Speaking of roster spots, though, you noticed something interesting about our defending champions roster.
Yeah. Eric has three players who are DH only. Um, and they're all arguably top 100 dynasty assets. You have Shohei Ohtani, obviously. But he also has Marcell Ozuna, who's DH only, and Brent Rooker, who's DH only. Obviously, Ohtani can also pitch, but Eric wants to use him at DH a lot, and he's definitely going to be there pretty much every day for Eric. Um, but like, I don't know what he does with Ozuna or Rooker. Like Ozuna, there's no way he ever gets back into that outfield. I mean, they just signed Jerickson Profar. They have Kellenic. Obviously Acuna once he gets back healthy, Michael Harris. Um, so I don't really see where Ozuna breaks into that mix. And even if they do have outfield injuries, I don't think they have any desire to put him back out there. Um, and then Brent Rooker, like the A's largely just limited him to DH. I mean, he got a few starts in the outfield, but I don't really get the sense they want to play him out there either. I mean, and they have some options, they have Lawrence Butler and maybe to give Estuary Ruiz a chance this year and don't punish him for making comments about Oakland and uh they have JJ Bleday. I wouldn't be surprised if they sign another guy or two, like small signings, like uh I don't know what Eric's gonna do. I think he has to trade one of these guys. He might kind of be forced into it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember a few years ago, Jake had the same issue. I believe Ozuna was one of his, I'm pretty sure, and I think it was maybe Jordan and Jorge Soler might have been. And I'm not sure how he solved it, but I'm pretty sure we only had the one util slot at the time. Regardless, though, he went on to um, win back-to-back championships. I think it might have been a year before that, but
We had two by then. I mean, we had two starting the 21 season.
okay, so it might have been, yeah, right in 2021.
Yeah.
Regardless, though, this is an issue that teams have had before and been successful shortly thereafter. And I've just kind of decided this year I'm not going to, you know, think I'm not going to worry about Eric's team. He, um, and there are a lot of things you can maybe, in an objective sense, trick yourselves into worrying about, but you know, Eric always figures it out. He, missed the playoffs one year and then he came back and won a championship. He missed the finals 2 years in a row and then he came back and won another championship. And he lost two-way Ohtani and we were worried about his starting pitchers and he won a championship last year after that. Everything just kind of seems to work out for him whenever we start to worry, so I'm just not going to worry about his team.
Yeah, I'm not worried as much as I just wonder if there's maybe an opportunity for him to make a trade to go and target a position of need. I mean, I think second base is by far the weakest position on his team. Like maybe there's a trade involving a second baseman that he can make. I'm not really sure. It is a pretty shallow position as is. So, but nonetheless, I'm sure he'll work it out, like you said. And injuries could happen, or some of these things that seem like problems end up finding a way of resolving themselves. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, that's pretty much it. Riffing on that. One little thing here I wanted to mention is so this was inspired by something that you almost signed up for. There is a 50 round, 15 team money draft. Um, that you almost signed up for, I was like, this is insane. That's 750 players. And in order to prove how insane it was, I did a 15 round 50 or 15 player, no, 50
15.
player, 15 team, 50 round mock draft on Fantasy Pros has a tool where you can just do a mock draft simulator. All the other teams are bots. And um, it predictably got very, very thin towards the bottom. Like I took Freelander Baroa in the 39th round, and like we were just kind of fighting for guys who are going to get any semblance of playing time. Teams started, the CPU didn't really know how to act after a certain point. Like it started drafting 10 relievers in a row. One team took 26 pitchers in a row to be precise, and another team went 14 rounds without a pitcher. Guys like Fraser Ellard were taken.
Hey man,
Um,
don't disrespect Frazier Eller, White Sox legend.
yeah,
Even though I
but
thought he was a Marlin.
you thought he was a Marlin. Um, and like it's like Jose Tena was a guy that I had to think about. Was he worth drafting?
He's
And
kind of
like and
interesting.
like but like with there being 5 rounds after that point, and it's I don't know, like if you want to do that league by yourself for money, feel free, but I it sounds so chaotic, especially if it's a seasonal thing, not a dynasty thing.
Yeah, so just for context, it's the NFBC draft and hold format. Those of you who listen to some of the like fantasy baseball podcasts from some of the people who are pretty entrenched in the industry, like they talk about a lot of these different formats on their podcast. Cam and I actually signed up for one. Um, it's called the Gladiator format. They run those drafts in November and December, and it's basically you
I
draft
forgot we did that.
yeah. You draft 23 players, and those are your 23 players all year. There's no bench. That's just your starting lineup. There's no ad drops, no fab, none of that. So uh, it's a pretty low commitment. You just see how your team does over the course of the season. So kind of like our early Gallardo drafts, where we didn't really have bench spots or didn't have a dynasty aspect to it. But yeah, this one's kind of like that on steroids. It's more than double the roster spots, and you actually have bench spots, but there's still no ad drops. So it's like whoever the 50 guys you draft are your 50 guys. So um, I told Cam it's not as crazy when you think about the fact that we already have 360 major league roster spots, and presumably we have more rostered at any given time because of the 8 IL spots we each have. So maybe that number at any time is a little closer to 400. And then, we roster 240 prospects. So I guess it doesn't quite get you to 750. And I mean, even if you're adding like the MPI, which not everybody uses. Um,
And but like we're this is doubling the number of major leaguers almost. Like
no,
it
I know.
is
Yeah, but
it's really thin. Like you're drafting guys who might pitch 20 innings in some crappy team's bullpen.
well, you inevitably draft a lot more prospects is kind of what ends up happening at the end. You kind of gamble on guys who are starting the season in AAA and who's going to come up and make an impact over drafting like Frazier Ellard, Um, but some people are true psychos. Um, I consider us true psychos. We're recording a podcast about our Dynasty Baseball League. When I tell
I am
people
not
that,
that kind
I
of
think they
psycho.
think I'm pretty psychotic, but uh, um, you know, it's a different type of psychotic, but it's still psychotic.
That is true. But yeah, so that's basically all I had here. You ready to get into the interview?
Yeah, let's get into the interview.
All right, perfect. Yeah, we have Ruthvik on the other side of the break. See you then.
Yep, see you then.
It's another joke that I don't get. I'm a deep sea diver, holding my breath, but it's plain you know me. I'm a deep sea diver, and I'm in too deep.
All right, we are back now with Ruthvik, the winner of the 2025. Which one is this? Jose Peraza. Yes, the Jose Peraza Award for Best Draft. So congratulations, Ruthvik. How are you feeling about your draft?
Honestly, big honor. Big honor to get the Jose Peraza um award here. Super excited to be back on the podcast. I feel like I get to make an appearance once in like 6 months now. When was the last time?
Yeah, it looks like it's definitely more frequent than it was for a
Yeah.
while. Looks like episode 150 was the last time. So about 28 episodes ago. Yeah, about half a year, maybe a little bit more.
Oh,
No, too
jeez, has it
bad.
been that long? Oh my God. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like that long.
Yeah, we have not had a ton of people on since then. Like we went 12 episodes in a row without any guests.
Oh wow.
That was kind of down the stretch last year, but yeah, no, great to have you back. And yeah, looking forward to kind of breaking down this draft you had.
Super excited. Honestly, it's been a while since I've got a chance to look at baseball with hockey picking up. So it'll be um nice to get things rolling with the season coming up as well.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. Spring training's finally here. Season's coming up here. I was super excited, but I mean we still have a full draft of years to talk about. I mean, like Cam mentioned, Jose Peraza draft award he won. Let's dive in right here. The first pick you made, six overall, Nick Kurtz. I think a lot of people were surprised that he was still there at that pick. And if I remember correctly, you were maybe considering not making that pick. Why don't you dive into that?
Oh, for sure. I think a lot of this draft really I feel like it didn't really fall the way I thought it would. I mean, obviously the first three picks I figured are pretty chalk, but then with Alex picking back to back before me, I obviously tried to trade up. I wanted to chase Burns pretty badly. Wanted to get a really, really good pitching prospect at that point. But once we kind of realized, like, all right, Alex really wanted to make the pick. I had a feeling Burns was going to go. And then I thought for sure he was going to take Condon or Kurtz at that point at five because Kurtz was going up the dynasty blogs and everything. Like he was the guy that was shooting up boards. So I thought he was going to go at five. But when Alex went Cam Smith, that's when my mind went two different ways. I obviously shopped the pick around. I wanted to see what's the best offer I can get with a bunch of names that were still there, especially with Condon being there. I know Andrew really wanted to trade up to try to get him. So I think I think Cam, did you and I talk about this pick or was it for a later one?
We did talk about this pick. I think we also talked about a different one, but we definitely did talk about this one here. I'm pulling up our chat right now. Um, yeah, I had eight, so I considered trading up from 8 to 6 to try and get Kurtz.
Hmm.
Um, I offered it earlier, or I kind of like in the morning. I thought, well, when we had done the mock draft, it was like, there's a chance Weatherholt could be available at 6 if a couple things fall the way I think they will. It
Hmm.
turns out not, but Kurtz was there. Um, I kind of tried to offer some prospects in addition to 8, and you weren't really
Oh yeah.
biting. I
Yeah,
didn't,
I think
yeah.
you had one of the more intriguing offers because yeah, trading down two, I figured, you know what, Kurtz and Condon. Actually, I thought I'd get one of Condon or Kurtz because I knew with Connor picking seven, he was gonna go Hagen Smith. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I could do it and let Cam make the tough decision for me. But then Andrew came in with another offer, which was Schwarber for six straight up, and I thought
Mhm.
about that for a while. And in the end, it would have fixed my biggest hole. It would have honestly fixed OBP. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if he's been an OBP monster like the past, but I think it would have fixed the power. It was such an enticing deal. But at the end, I looked more into Kurtz and I figured, you know what? Let me take the guy who's pretty much like expected to be one of the safest picks in this draft. Let me just try to see what it's going to be like to own a prospect that's that safe and someone I'm excited to come up through the farm. So I had to make the pick. The value was too good. Kurtz at 6, I think anyone would have taken. And then I pretty much went right back to the board and tried to offer, I think, Connor for that pick, but that was never gonna happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that is surprising. And Schwarber for the record had 366 OBP last year, so definitely would have helped you there.
Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, damn, Schwarber would be a nice get, but I do think that, uh, he's definitely a great pick at 6. I mean, I think that's arguably the best value pick of the first round. I mean, I know that there are some really interesting picks late and later in the round, and I could definitely see them really popping off. But man, like Kurtz at 6, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
especially with you having Christian Walker getting a bit older.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's a good point because I did think about that as well. I think the other reason why I kind of hesitated with Schwarber was the positional eligibility. I didn't know for how much longer he was going to be an outfield eligible player.
he's not
So,
anymore.
oh, he's not. Sorry, he already
Oh,
lost it.
I actually read a report today that they might put him in the outfield a little bit to let Real Muto DH some more. But yeah, I think he played maybe 2 games in the outfield last year.
Oh yeah, that pretty much depresses all value he has because I'm already tied to Yoshida playing DH for me pretty much, so covering one of the utility spots for the whole year. So it'll be really rough to have two guys there to have absolutely no flexibility for my team. So I think that was pretty much the biggest reason why I didn't do that. And then yeah, with Walker, I think my logic was, let's see if he becomes a Jose Abreu for for the Astros or if he continues being Christian Walker. And if he does do what he normally does for another year, then Nick Kurtz can come up hopefully sometime next year and then hopefully eventually becomes my starting first baseman starting like 2027.
Yeah, I mean, I arguably think he's going to be up even sooner. I think he might be up by the end of 25. That wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I mean, I think you have a nice gem on your hands. Um, let's dive into the next pick here. You pick Christian Moore at 10. But you didn't initially have the 10th overall pick. You acquired that pick in a trade for Bobby Miller, in a trade that I think it shocked a lot of people. I mean, I certainly was not expecting that to happen. I mean, kind of explain how that one went down and why you ended up pulling the trigger and trading Bobby Miller, who I mean struggled last year, but looked pretty damn promising in 23. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the easiest of decisions for you.
Um, yeah, that was definitely a much harder decision, but I think for me, I I still believe that he's got the talent. I still think he's going to be a really, really good starting pitcher, and he's very young. My issue was the Dodgers just kept signing starting pitchers, and he kept getting pushed out. And I realized one of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past is holding on to a guy for too long who is going to end up becoming like a roster crunch, and then I end up inevitably dropping or trading them for pennies. So I was shopping Bobby Miller quite a bit, and Andrew's been the one who was really, really interested in him, even right after I traded for him. So there was always interest there, and I knew I can make a big deal with Andrew for him. I just didn't know where to approach that. And I'm pretty sure he's offered this first round pick in the past, and I've turned it down. But I think leading up to the draft, with roster space also becoming a problem, I think I offered him for like second round picks at one point. I think the highest I tried offering him was to Dan and Matt for 3, but with me adding, I think, some prospects in there. And they, rightfully turned that down. And I think they offered, I don't even know if they offered 13. I think they offered 25 for for Bobby Miller. They were so far down on him. So I thought, you know what, that's totally fair. So or they might have had 19 actually. I think they had 19. So I ended up kind of hesitating about what I wanted to do, but eventually when it was time for Andrew's turn to pick, I knew he didn't want to pick that because Condon was gone. And at that point, he really wanted to trade out. So I think we discussed some other pieces, but eventually I was like, you know what, let me try this because I wanted to trade into this latter part of the first round. because I think this was where I liked a couple of guys. I liked Christian Moore a lot, and I also liked Braden Montgomery. So I figured, you know what, let me try. And I think I actually tried asking Eric first for the trade, and that didn't work. And so I went back to Andrew, and I was like, you know what, what? How about a 1-for-1 here? And he like right away pretty much said, yeah, I'm down. So that was that was pretty exciting. I definitely want like getting a first round pick for a guy who came off of a rough year, who doesn't have a guaranteed rotation spot, and with my also I had a ton of starting pitchers on my roster. So cutting down one for a first round pick was almost a no-brainer for me. And then at the same time having a guy who I think I had honestly when I created my like really quick last minute draft board, I think Christian Moore was in my top six or so. Like he was in that tier just below the super safe, like Sasaki, Bazana, Kurtz tier for me and Weatherholt. So he was a guy that was really high up. So to get him at 10, I was really, really excited about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely a great get at that spot. And yeah, Bobby Miller, I think you were kind of spot on there. He has the talent, but I just don't think it's going to be happening as long as he's in a Dodgers uniform, as long as they've got um a million starting pitchers. And granted, I'm sure a lot of them are going to get hurt, but I agree there's enough of a chance that he's just a guy you cut in June that
Yeah.
getting Christian Moore for him is fantastic.
Yeah, I think this is one of those where the team context is really important. You know, if he wasn't on the Dodgers, I think that you know, I think there'd be a stronger argument for keeping him because he would probably be in a rotation, and it's really easy to see why he could potentially bounce back. But yeah, I mean, with the Dodgers, I mean, Jesus Christ, that rotation's insane. Yeah, I think it's a harder justification. So yeah, I don't blame you. Uh, and Moore is interesting too. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I just hope the Angels don't ruin him, like they did with their last first round pick. So I that's it. I was definitely a little worried, you know, taking a guy on the Athletics and then a guy on the Angels. Not great teams, but you know, they could also end up being their stars. So who knows? But I was also excited because I can rebuild my infield through the draft, which I've not been an active participant of the draft too often. So it's nice to have some prospects to be excited about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think Moore, yeah, not just rebuilding him, he will be or re rebuilding your infield. He will be up like in June or something this year. I'd be shocked if he's not up by the end of the year. So you'll definitely could be helping you make a playoff push. Um,
Absolutely. Why don't we dive into the rest of the picks here? So you took Joswar Gonzalez at the 19th overall pick in
well,
a
before
second.
that, Carson Bengi at 17 with a pick
Oh
that you had
yeah.
going in.
How did I miss that? Yeah. Got
Oh
you.
yeah, Benji at 17. Yeah, I mean, this was kind of an obvious one. If anything, I was worried about the order of Josmar Gonzalez and Carson Benji at this point, but I I think the rest of the draft pretty much Bryce Rayner, Connor Griffin, Brandon Montgomery, once they went, I figured it was going to be one of my two guys. And then I wasn't re particularly interested in the early part of the second round. So he was an obvious pick. I wanted to get a Mets prospect. I think everyone's excited about Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford, but there's just something about them that the Mets are not super excited about. That's why they went out. They got Jose Siri, they got, you know, they got Juan Soto, of course, but there's not too much excitement from the Mets camp as far as I can see about those prospects. And especially with them taking a first round outfielder. So super excited to see how this guy plays out. I mean, middle of the second round, it's pretty much just a dart throw at this point, but had to make a homer pick.
I don't blame you. I mean, I think that was an appropriate place to take him, and you know, it's not just a homer pick. He's a good player. I think the same way when Connor took Hagen Smith, like, yeah, he was a White Sox, but very good talent.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's the right pick there. And pick 19, we teased it earlier, Joseph Gonzalez. We were kind of, we're thinking, a lot of guys take these international amateurs really early. I think maybe the last couple of years we've kind of stopped doing that. but we were kind of wondering how high up is Joshua going to go. He went 19 to you. This really felt like the appropriate spot for him. This was a pick you acquired from Daniel. Why don't you talk about how you got this pick and what you like about Joshua?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this was a trade that was in the works from before the draft. I offered them Tyler O'Neill because I think I had like a rough top 15 created for the draft, and Yosua Gonzalez was right towards the bottom of that. So I had told him like, hey, if one of my main guys is like available, I'll probably go for it. And of course, once I picked at 17, I was pretty excited to see that he was still on the board. So when Jake passed on him, it was kind of an obvious pick for me. I think I I also like kind of going for the international prospects because they tend to shoot up pretty fast if they're good, and then if not, they'll kind of falter away because they're so young when they come into the system. So I feel like you'll see right away if they're going to be a star, and a lot of us keep an eye out for those players, and they get picked up after the draft pretty easily. So I figured, you know what, why not try it for someone who scouts are saying could be the next Lindor? Like when you see that kind of praise for a 17-year-old, you with my fourth pick in the draft, the upside's there.
Absolutely. Don't blame you going for the upside pick there. Definitely one of the top, if not arguably the top international guy um in this year's FYPD. I think he was an appropriate pick there. I think Cam and I said like on the prior podcast, the one before the draft, like the 18th pick would be perfect for him. So for you to get him at 19, I think was I think I speak for Cam as well. Pretty much exactly where we thought he was going to be valued.
Yeah, no, 100%. So absolutely nailed those first four picks. Third rounders, they were kind of dart throws. You've already cut Wyatt Sanford. You do still own Elian Pena. Why don't you, I guess, briefly mention these picks and your trade with Andrew back from 29 to 30 because that was kind of a
Oh
funny one.
yeah. I think honestly, I don't think I told you, Sahil, but I was kind of aiming for Griffin Burkholder at this spot. I liked him. I think he's a big power guy. I think he's one of those that can develop pretty nicely for the sport. Thinks he's got the tools that the team are looking for now. So I thought, hey, let's see if he falls. But actually, right when I was gonna pick at 29. I think when Seaver King went 25, I looked at my board and I was like, okay, I know three guys left on this, and it's Slade Caldwell, Song Kim, and Ryan Sloan. And of course, that became pick 26, 27, and 28. So with all three guys that I like being because I wanted to get Song Kim at 19 and then see, but then I figured there's no way I get Yosar Gonzalez at 29. So I took a risk and it just did not work out. So when that happened, I honestly knew that whoever I was going to take, I was most likely going to drop because there were no trades available at that point. So when Andrew suggested the trade up, I was like, oh, why not? It'll be fun. And it's funny enough, when we were making the trade, I was looking through like more and more draft boards, and then PJ Morlando's name kept coming up. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll take this guy. And then of course, Andrew takes him with the pick that I traded him. So that was a funny sequence of events. So Wyatt Sanford was kind of the next name that kept popping up, but I almost knew I wasn't going to end up keeping him.
Yeah, well, if both of them end up as Hall of Famers, I owe each of you a sody pop. So, uh,
That is true.
yeah, that's no. I don't. I had the same reaction in the draft. After that first 28, there was exactly one more player I had on my board. So, you were not alone. This wasn't a super deep draft, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
hmm but yeah, so draft as a whole, I guess, looking back at it, you prior to this year had made eight draft picks ever. And
No
this
way.
year, yeah, eight ever. Four of them um, were international adults. So like Yuki Matsui and Musako, you took back to back, and one of them was only because I kind of traded you
Oh yeah.
the
What's
pick.
up?
But
Ooh.
But yeah, so you've made only 8 picks ever. You made 6 this year. Is this kind of a change in strategy, a change in thought process, or did you just kind of have things fall in your lap?
I think I honestly think probably a mix of both. I think a lot of people are excited about the top of this draft, and I just avoided that top tier. So once I kind of got the remainder of those tier one, tier two players, that's when I kind of figured, you know what, let me try taking a shot in the dark for those guys. But also, I just looked at my team, and I think it was the first time I wasn't super excited about my opening day roster whereas I felt like in the past I used to have like a pretty set idea of how things were flowing. This year, I think, my starting pitchers definitely have not been as good as they were in the past. I'm relying on a lot of like guys to keep up an end of last year's surge. I'm relying on maybe two guys to have good strikeout numbers, but otherwise, then going to my bullpen, it's the same three really good relievers who I feel like just haven't hit their peak. So nothing really exciting there. And then going to the offense, there are just so many holes. I definitely did not do super hot after my Acuna trade. That one worked out well for me. But since then, I feel like the Jackson Churio trade was definitely one that I probably should not. Well, I probably shouldn't do it. I think definitely was something I regret. But Sahil and I have talked about this trade numerous times. But it can still. It was Jackson Churio, Rafael Devers, and I think Brooks Lee for Bobby Miller, Francisco Alvarez and Julio Rodriguez. So definitely still, Francisco Alvarez can still become the top catcher that I want him to be. Julio can still go back to top five player Julio. But I think the rate at which Jackson Churio is developed and then Rafi Devers is still Rafi Devers, I feel like they would have offered more of that stability for this team. So since then, I feel like I've been trying to plug in a lot of holes. So I wasn't super excited about this year's roster. So I figured, you know what, let me reset, try to get build through the farm, at least get guys that are honestly like already rated pretty high. Like Nate Kurtz is already top 30 in a lot of draft boards. I think Christian Moore is top 40 in most of them. So it's nice to get players like that rather than trying to figure out who's going to rise and who's not. So that was a change. I don't know if this is going to happen again next year. I feel like it's probably one of those like once in 2, 3 years retooling kind of a process. But we'll see. If I end up becoming a lottery team this year, then that changes. But if I end up making the playoffs and needing a couple of pieces to compete, then those picks are going to be gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, I think it could be fun. I mean, I know I had a draft where I had two first round picks. It could be fun from time to time, but yeah, it's definitely not something that, I think you and I both are not really the drafting type. So, I don't think this is something that I think we'll be doing too often is making high draft picks. So. But it is crazy that you'd only made 8 up until this point. That's just nuts. But oh my God,
Yeah, that's like in 5 drafts, maybe. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, that's
It's
that's
also because I mortgaged my farm and future for Kyrat Ruiz and Jaron Duran, which, hey, if I kept Duran, it would have been great.
yeah. I'm very happy to have Duran right now. But yeah, God, that's
Yeah,
jeez.
you had participated in 6 drafts up until this year. You had only taken one first rounder before this year. Your 8 picks prior to this year, Durbin Feltman, Ryan Weathers, Cameron Meisner, Kwang Hyun Kim, Kodai Senga, Yohandi Morales, who you instantly traded to me,
Hmm.
Woo-Suk Go, and Yuki Matsui.
Wow. I mean, honestly, they like Weathers ended up being a decent major leaguer. Kim, I think, was also a very late pick, and he had a pretty good career for me. At least, I think maybe 2 years in the majors, and then ended up going overseas. Not too bad. I think a lot were upside darts, but I'll take 3 success stories out of 8 picks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Weathers and Senga, definitely Senga has been. And that was your one pick that was higher than 23. So it's not like you were picking high up and missing either. But this year definitely, yeah, had 4 picks higher than 23. So really shopping at the top, which you had not done before.
Yeah, and also to be honest, like the price for these picks was just so low that also made it easier for me to go after the picks because I owned two of these picks. I had my own, I think, Kurtz at 6 overall, and I also had number 17. Um, which how did that happen where I got 6 but then 17? I just realized. Shouldn't I have 6 and then 18?
It must have, I think six was maybe part of the lottery.
Yeah, so six was
Um,
the lottery. That was your own pick. Unless you traded away
yeah, I think you
and
maybe moved
reacquired it.
back as you moved
Oh,
back a
was
slot in the
that the
lottery.
Santander trade? Did you
No, no.
this back?
It was the Santander trade where I got it back, but yeah, I think Cam's right. The odds were tied with 5 and 6 for my pick and Jake's pick, and then mine ended up going back one, and then Jake's ended up being number one.
Oh yeah. Poor
That
Jake.
is true. Yeah,
Uh,
so I think because of that, I already had those two picks, and then the price to get the other two top 20 picks were, Bobby Miller and Tyler O'Neill. And don't get me wrong, Tyler O'Neill is also a fantastic player. Like I really liked him since his 30-30 year, but he just gets hurt way too often. And I think by then, I'm not too certain if he had signed with the Orioles by then. Um,
yeah, he had.
oh,
He
he did.
he signed early in the offseason, O'Neal did, yeah.
Oh, right, right. So yeah, the injuries just I was not too happy about like having to constantly figure out if, is he gonna slide into my outfielder spot or do I need to find another? So the injuries were just too much and he goes so hot and so cold and then he just stopped stealing bases too. So maximized his value. So for the price of Bobby Miller and Tyler O'Neill, I felt like those two picks were pretty much like a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
blame you.
I feel like I'd rather have O'Neal than Miller, if we're being honest. So it's kind of surprising that they went for opposite. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, for opposite values, but yeah, what do I know?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think Andrew's pretty happy about that. So, I think I hope it doesn't become a Kyle Wright situation like early on in Kyle Wright's career, where it was a guy like he doesn't have to burn a roster spot, and hopefully it becomes like a 2023 Kyle Wright situation where he goes off for him, but we'll see.
oh God, the apt comparison today because Kyle Wright has been caught, but
Shocking, by the way. He held on to him all the way through the the Tommy John year and right when he's coming back.
yeah, that's one of those I don't really understand, admittedly, but
To be fair, Jason Adam was someone I had my eye on, but it just could not cut anyone to pick him up.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, he's a good one. I'm yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes for him this year in San Diego, full year. And hey, I mean, they're talking about treating Robert Suarez. Maybe he's got a closer on his hands.
Yeah, yeah, and if not, he'll get a bunch of saves and holds either way.
Oh
I
yeah,
think that was a great pick for him.
100%.
All right, so I think that's enough about your draft. Real quick, Ruthvik, you put out a trading block today, or at least uh some thoughts. Munoz Duran on the block for a really good young outfielder. Um, I guess, yeah, why don't you talk about what you're looking for here and if you're getting any bites.
Yeah, I mean the state of my outfield is right now just Julio Rodriguez, Steven Kwan, and the ghost of Lars Nootbaar and Garrett Mitchell. So that's all I have for outfield. And I feel like it's easily the worst outfield in the league, even with Julio carrying it. So I definitely need to get another outfielder or two because I don't even know if I have anyone on the farm. I feel like let me see, I have it right here. Oh, I have a Kevin Alcantara, I guess, if he comes up. And then Dustin Harris was actually decent in the very few looks he had last year. So if any of them, break the team on opening day, then um that would be great. But yeah, I figured just putting these guys on the block because Munoz and Duran are really good. But for me, a really good reliever is honestly probably it's like a running back on a football team. It's the last piece you need to compete, not what you build your team around. So if I can get good value offers for either of them, and I was the last couple of years, I've just been turning them down. I feel like it's got to be no-brainers, and you can always get good relievers every single year off of free agency. So might as well try to get the hard pieces through trade, and then we'll see what we can get with the relievers later.
Yeah, no, fair enough. There's a lot of this time of year, it's there's kind of a scramble to get relievers. It feels like there a lot is in flux. So if you can get something good for one of these guys, I'm sure you would definitely do well to do so.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else though about your team, what you're looking to do before the season starts, or any conversations you've been having?
I think yeah, I've thrown some very preliminary offers for some outfielders. Kind of, trying to get someone who can stay on the team and be effective for like 2, 3 years. So guys who've started to peak last year or ended the year pretty strong. So definitely trying to get a couple more of those players. I think there's still a lot of really good prospects out there. So if I can trade some of my prospects, ideally anyone I didn't, draft this year, then getting some roster space there has also been pretty valuable. But um, pretty much just open to any kind of trades. I have a lot of starting pitchers I need to kind of filter through. So, would love to trade some starting pitchers for ideally an outfielder, if not just an upgrade somewhere, because I feel like I'm in that flux of where am I, is this team gonna compete or am I gonna have half like dead weight on this team? So got a lot of moves to make, but that's honestly the exciting part for February and March is just trying to figure out who are those guys that are worth keeping.
Yeah, for sure. It's always tough. I think, you've definitely had some success over the last couple of years, but I think you're right to the extent that you could kind of retool this team to really put yourself in contention here. I think you have the right idea. So, um, it's exciting. I'm hoping with you and some other people starting to think about baseball again now that the spring training started. Maybe we'll see some more trades here. I think that kind of happened last year when spring training started and teams were able to use their IL spots, gave them a little more roster flexibility. So
Oh
I won't
yeah.
be surprised if you can get a few more moves in. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it seems
We
like
can't wait for that.
yeah, it feels like it's the same couple people trading in the off season right now. So it's exciting to get everybody else back in. But um, yeah, Cam, anything else you want to ask?
No, I think that's everything. Great to have you on, Ruthvik. I know we nitpick your team a lot, so it's nice to have you come on and be like, yeah, you had a great had a great draft. You did great.
It feels good. It's always nice to come talk about baseball here, but yeah, it's nice defending my team when I actually have faith in them, and oh, what is it like when you can like actively argue against the haters, but unfortunately, I'm not as excited about the team this year, so I don't even know if it's gonna be fun to pick on this team. I'll be surprised if I can even go 500 with this roster right now.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll definitely see. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's gonna be you never know how it goes each year. There's always a team that surprises. There's always a team that disappoints. Who would have thought that Jake wouldn't be a playoff team last year?
Right, right, that's true. And I guess my new favorite player for the year, I'm calling it right now. My Christian Yelich for the year is actually his teammate. It's Garrett Mitchell season.
Ooh,
Ooh.
I've seen some tweets about him recently, just about how uh some of the underlying skills that they look really good. I kind of dig that, and it looks like Yelich might not be ready for opening day, so I
Hmm.
give Mitchell a nice path to playing time.
I
No,
think he's definitely the guy to look out for. He had a 340 OBP last year, only had about 200 at bats, still had an 8 home run, 11 stolen base year. So, if we just completely extrapolate that for a whole season, I'm expecting a 30-30 year out of him.
hmm. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think he certainly has that potential. Um, but yeah, that'd be such a fun outfield for them. Churio, Mitchell, and Yelich if they're all popping off. My God. That might be the best outfield in the league.
And they have Frelick too, right?
Oh yeah, forgot about him. God, yeah, that would be insanely fun.
Yeah. Also, actually, I'm glad that we had the podcast today because I wanted to talk about the Bregman signing. Because that just happened recently. I don't know how I like that for the Red Sox. I feel like he's one of those players that he's not really you're not really getting him at the peak. You're not getting a lot of power. You're not getting much on the base paths. Is he really a player that they needed? Especially to play a position where they have such a high ranked prospect who they can at least give a clear shot to and see what he's made of. I feel like they would have been so much better off having Christian Campbell at second, and then when Roman Anthony comes for that outfield, you're also not spending 120 mil on these players.
Right. So
Mhm.
my take is if they had gotten him for like what the Pete Alonso contract was, I'd be all in because he's probably going to opt out after that first year. And, it gives you time if Christian Campbell's struggling or, injuries might pop up. Campbell can maybe play short when Trevor Story inevitably gets hurt. But like at 40 mil, I don't think he's turning down the opportunity to come back and play for the Red Sox next year with that contract. I mean, he's not going to get 40 mil a year in the open market. And, if he was getting 6 for 171, I think was the offer the Tigers made. If he plays all 3 years with Boston, and I get that some of the money's deferred, but he'll get it eventually. Like, uh, that's 3 for 120. He just would need to make 51 mil over the 3 years after that to beat what he was getting here. Like, I think he could probably do that if he keeps up decent performances, especially with his defense. He's not just like an Alonso I mean, Alonso plays good first base defense, but he is still just a first baseman. He plays solid defense at a premium defensive position. So, yeah, I feel like Boston could be stuck with like a $40 million albatross. I'm a little worried about that. And he wasn't as good last year. Like the walk rate like cut down significantly. He's not hitting for as much power as he used to. I don't know. I think you're right. I don't know, Cam, what you thought of the signing, but
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. It's definitely a lot for him, and sure, a lot of it's deferred, but 40 million a year is a lot, and I'm not sure he's 30 now, and he was decent this year, but yeah, the walk rate was a lot lower than it ever has been, so that is concerning.
yeah, I mean, I think the walks are going to tick back up. I don't know about the rest of the profile. And then it's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts to second base. And I don't know if that might contribute to, maybe he struggles a little bit, as he's, learning the position, might, seep in offensively. Wouldn't be the first player who's adjusting to a new defensive position that struggles
A hundred,
offensively.
100%. And that's the thing. Like, yeah, if you're still playing third base, I could possibly agree to that. But, playing second base, playing at a team that you have to, it's Boston's going to expect a lot right out of the gate. You're in a totally different division, very competitive division where like one game makes a massive difference. I just don't know how I feel about getting a guy who's arguably already past his peak. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, yeah, I think he'll be good next year, but definitely not 40 million good. I don't think any player right now is how much is I mean, Juan Soto, obviously, like he'll be making
Yeah.
55 mil a year. I mean, uh I I think I don't know if I did the math properly, but yeah, there's no way that Bregman's only worth like 15 mil less than that.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. We have been recording this all. Yeah, I am ready to wrap up unless there's any closing notes we want.
I got nothing other than I was just killed. Uh this is like the first time in over a year that while recording, I'm not playing College Football 25 or the show, and it's weird. Uh, I'm playing Hitman.
Man. Um, well, all right, go get some hits. We're gonna be um, recording our main segment
That's what
after
I'm telling
this.
my hockey team right now. Go get some hits. Of course, Ruthvik over here as Mr. What is it, Kiefer Sherwood,
I know, I know. Oh,
just breaking a hits record.
I hope he does. Just don't get hurt for the rest of the year.
I feel like one of your secrets for the hockey league is like there are these guys, these like super hitty guys who are like one category hit merchants, and like they'll
Yeah.
occasionally have a plus minus. We're like, yeah, we don't pick these guys up because they're not actually good. And then you see them and you're like, oh, this guy gets a million hits. I should roster him. He's 2% owned, but he's
Yep.
been great because he hits a lot. And it's working because they're good, and we just are overlooking them.
That's all I did during the like 2 years I was rebuilding hardcore was just farming the hits. And now I have Hathaway, Sherwood, and that Rangers left winger that I almost traded from you last year. I'm forgetting his name.
Uh, it's not Heedle, is it?
No, no, no. It was I think you and I like almost made a trade for him, but then I was like, why am I trading for a hits guy? And this year he's actually get doing stuff outside of that, so it's been good.
Yeah, I am meanwhile trying to copy the Ruthvik strategy. So let's
It's the
hopefully
easiest category to win because no one
yeah,
cares about it.
hits and blocks. Yeah,
Mhm.
I got Mathieu Olivier, got Eli Tolvanen now. I'm sure I'm absolutely butchering these names, but uh,
Um, I think Ely Tolvanen you got. I can't speak to the French name, but Matthew Olivier. Uh,
I think it's Mathieu. I've heard that name pronounced before. I'm pretty sure it's Mathieu.
bless you.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. I'm not French. At least I don't think I am.
All right. Well, I thank you for coming on, Ruthvik, and yeah, we will see you all next week with either wards if they're done, or if not, we might have something else fun planned.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, guys. Always a pleasure.
This podcast is good.